Good evening, this is Danny Elms, and tonight's recording is going to be how to fill out the listing agreement that was modified recently as of June 24th, 2024, due to the NAR offer of settlement. So, if you're not familiar with this form, it is number 1101. You will need this for any listing agreement. And 1102 is if you're not selling it, you're leasing it, but they're practically the same document. So you'll notice I've already filled in the parties, Mary Jones, and here's her address and her email. Here's our office address, the realtor's email, which is mine. And let's go down here to number 2, the property. We'll put in some numbers here, and let's put the address of the property in here. And let's say she's selling her home at 123 Main Street, the one that she's living in currently. Dallas, Texas 75240. So if you don't know where this information comes from about lot and block, you might see if that information is in MLS from a prior listing, or you'll go into the appraisal district of the county. In this case, it's Dallas County or Dallas CAD, CAD. What's the next item we fill out? We scroll down. Okay, exclusions. The following improvements and accessories will be retained by the seller and must be removed prior to delivery of possession. So this is one of those where maybe Mary in our example says, the chandelier belonged to my great grandmother and I'm taking it with me. And I'm going to put it right here in the listing agreement that says owner to retain, if I can spell chandelier correctly, hanging in, we'll say it's in the dining room. Now, obviously, you need to put that in the MLS that's going to be retained, and you need to make sure with an offer that's received on this house, the buyer knows that that chandelier is not going to convey with the house. And then, obviously, once you have this ready to go, your signature goes here, and Mary's, the seller's signature goes, in this case, initials go here. Signature on the last page. Okay. Now, what should happen is the address should be populating here. It's not, but we'll worry about that later because I want to really concentrate on the fields that you've got to fill in. Owners Association. So let's say she is, which means you need to ensure that the MLS reflects that it's in a property owners association, or HOA as I might refer to it as, and that you are able to get those POA documents over to the buyers through title. All right, listing price, simple enough. She lives in Dallas, so let's say that house is going to be listed for $449,500, just to put a price in there. Term, we'll put today's date, July 28th, and she wants to list it for, let's say, 3 months to see how that goes, which would be, if I'm not mistaken, October 28th. Now, here is where the confusion comes in. Broker compensation. These are the fields that are highlighted, and we'll spend the most time here. What it says is broker compensation, or the sharing of compensation between brokers, is not set by law nor fixed, controlled, recommended, or suggested by the Association of Realtors, MLS, or any listing service. Broker compensation is fully negotiable. Brokers independently determine their fees. So it's telling us you fill in either 5A or 5B. They are mutually exclusive. So we'll do the easy one first. 5B. What this is saying is broker's fee. That's us. We're the listing agent. When the seller has said to you, the listing agent, I'm not going to be paying a buyer's agent commission, right here. So if this is a situation where your seller says, nope, the buyer, has to pay the buyer's commission, you go in here and you say, all right, when earned and payable, seller will pay United, in our case, how much? And let's say they're going to give you 2% to list their house. And you're done with this section. And you move on to fill out the rest of the form. That's when there is no buyer's agent compensation. But let's say you've had a conversation with your seller and they said, yes, you've convinced them that they need to offer buyer's compensation. Let's take that 2% off. Let's take that X out, and we now focus on paragraph 5A. So in this case, this Paragraph 5A includes payment of compensation to the other broker working with the buyer. Seller authorizes broker to compensate the other broker as indicated below. 5A1, when earned and payable, seller will pay broker what? They will pay them, let's say, 4% total. Okay? And I'll leave these two blank for now. And I'm going to come right down here. From amount stated in 5A above, which was this 4%, broker will pay the other broker the following fees if the other broker procures a buyer that purchases the property. So if United's getting a total of 4, we will give the carpeting broker 2. Okay, see how that works? I could have said 1.5 here. I could have said 3. It all depends upon what your relationship is with the seller. But that's how this blank and this blank work together. Okay, now what are these other blanks? Well, if the other agent is a sub agent, you could use part of the commission, but I'm going to say 0. I don't pay a sub agent. How do I get that? Hit the space bar, turn it to green, 0. All right. Now, or you could go back up here when earned and payable. Let's say you're not going to pay 4%, and let's get rid of the 2 here. Leave that 0. But let's say they say, I'm going to pay you because a house is priced at $449,500, if I believe what I put in the field a couple blanks above. They will say, we will pay you $10,000 to list your house. Okay. And of that $10,000, how much do you want to give to the other agent? Okay, let's split it half and half. You give them $5,000. Okay. And then I'll go down here, sub agent, 0. That's how those fields work together. So if you're paying a broker's commission to the cooperating broker, you fill out 5A. If you're not, you fill out 5B. But we will say we are offering commission of $10,000 with $5,000 to the cooperating broker. Now, what's this 5B for? This is a true situation. I was offered if I could gain the listing, which unfortunately I didn't get. They had I think it was a 1978 Pontiac Firebird in owner's garage, red in color. I'm just being very descriptive so they don't kind of change it out on me. So you technically could get money or a tangible asset to list this house. Now, what's funny is, would you split that Firebird in half to give to the buying agent? No. And the buying agent probably isn't aware that you're getting that Firebird, but that's for a different story. Okay, we're going to say that is what's being offered to list that house. So let's go down. What does this say? Note, seller paying buyer's expenses. In addition to paying the above broker's fees, seller may be asked by a buyer to contribute an amount toward buyer's expenses, such as buyer's broker's fees or other expenses payable by buyer under a sales contract. And then it says, see paragraph 11F regarding broker's authority to disclose these contributions. We'll come to that in a second. Okay. Let's go to page 3. We're looking for blanks to fill in. You're welcome to read all of this if you'd like. Okay. Other fees or reimbursable expenses. So let's say, for example, and it's happened to a couple of agents here in the office where you list a house and it's not able to be sold and you've put a lot of effort and time into this. Well, we don't work for free as agents. So let's say, for example, what are the reimbursable expenses? Let's say we want our photos reimbursed. $200 for photos. Okay. And I could leave it just like that. Or I could say I want 200 photos and 100 for printouts. And let's say because you went out and did some open house flyers, whatever. But you can put those here, and that's what that is. Other fees or reimbursable expenses on top of this number here. Okay. We go down next, protection period. What is a protection period? It's kind of a misnomer, but what it does is, let's say, for example, you're listing a house there for Mary Jones and a buyer comes up and they have a buyer's agent, but you just can't come to a deal. Let's say you're about 5,000 apart. So the buyer decides they will approach Mary Jones without you or the buyer's agent knowing and tell Mary, hey, why don't we cut the agents out? I'll just buy from you directly. And it happened to me once. Fortunately, the other agent was honest and she called me and told me what was going on. And I pointed out this to my buyer because I had the buyer's agent rep in this case. Protection period means that the time starting the day after this listing ends and continuing for put 30 days, 60, 90, whatever you're comfortable with, okay? Sell means any transfer of any fee, simple interest in the property, whether by oral or written agreement or option, okay? So what this also says is when the listing agreement ends, you, the listing agent, need to send to the seller the people that you are protecting. So let's say you have an inkling that buyer X is going to try to do exactly what I've described above, put them on that document, okay? And send it to the seller. Now, when does this protection period not matter? Let's say the listing agreement either expires and Mary Jones doesn't wait the 38 days and she gets another agency, being another broker, to list it. Well, the protection period is no longer valid. So this really is in case they try to do for sale by owner and you put all the work into it. Okay, county, that's easy. We are in Dallas County. Put that right there. Dallas is where the United Dallas office is. That's why we didn't put Collin County. Listing services. Well, you talk to your seller because believe it or not, some sellers will say, I don't want this information out anywhere because I've gone through a messy divorce. I don't want my spouse or ex-spouse to be able to see that I'm selling the house. That's probably one reason that you wouldn't want it on the services, but we do. We want to sell this house, so I'm going to list it. Broker will file this listing with one or more MLSs. Okay. And then I will say, broker will file this listing with one or more services by the earlier of the times required or 5 days after the listing begins. Now, the other choice is you're not going to file this, which, unless it's the above example I gave you, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Okay. Then here it says broker will not file this listing with any other MLSs. So what's the difference here? Seller instructs buyer's broker not to file this listing with one or more MLSs until blank days after the date this listing begins for the following purposes. So in this case, let's say, well, a good example would be they want you to wait. We take this, well, we want this, and we could take this here. Okay, check one box only. And we'll say 10 days. Okay, we'll say the reason it's 10 days after owner moving all possessions to new home, for example. Okay, that'd be why you put that there. Here is where you never file it, which again, unless it's like the messy divorce, it doesn't make sense. Come down to the next page. You're again welcome to read this. Scheduling companies. Broker may engage the following companies to schedule appointments. Well, we use Broker Bay for free, so I'll put Broker Bay in. But if you're old school, you could use CSS, which charges you to do your listing. Key box is Supra. For example, broker is authorized, which makes sense. Why not put it on the property? The time maybe it wouldn't be there is, let's say, for example, let's say it's a really expensive or pricey home, or the owner just doesn't feel comfortable, because some have said, I'm not comfortable with that being there, and I want the agent, being you, the listing agent, to walk every potential buyer through my house. But we usually have a Supra or lockbox somewhere on the property. Next page, intermediary. Well, you want to reserve that obviously because you never know. Maybe United has the listing, which is you in this case, and maybe the buyer comes from a United agent as well. So, of course, check intermediary status, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, next page. We are here. Broker's authority. Broker will use reasonable efforts and act diligently to market the property for sale, procure a buyer, and negotiate the sale of the property. If box 6A1 is checked, and what is box 6A1? Well, let's go back and see. Six A1. Okay, that's falling out of MLS. So we go back here. Broker is authorized to display this listing on the internet without limitation unless one of the following is checked. Seller does not want this listing to be displayed on the internet, or seller does not want the address of the property to be displayed on the internet. Well, why would you do that when, again, you don't want your ex to be notified that the property is for sale? Or maybe it's a situation, I struggle to come up with another one, but that's the most obvious. Okay. But I'm going to leave both of those unchecked because I want that property sold. Now, broker is authorized to market the property with the following financing. Of course, we want conventional, and we like veterans, and we'll take an FHA, and we love cash, right? And if you're going to take VA, why not take Texas veterans land? I will not owner finance in this case. Just an example. Leave other blank because I'm not trading, for example, for something else. You go down. Here's that paragraph 11F that was talked about back in paragraph 5. Seller does or does not authorize a broker to share with other brokers and prospective buyers that seller will consider contributing an amount towards buyer's expenses, such as buyer's fees or other expenses payable by a buyer under a sales contract. Seller is not obligated to pay any specific amount and has sole discretion to determine the amount seller will pay toward buyers during negotiations with the buyer. It talks about TXR 1412. Well, if I'm listing the house, I'm going to convince my seller that they should allow me to say to the potential buyers, yes, we're offering seller contributions. Send me your best offer. It's negotiable, and I will talk to my seller about your offer, including the buyer's agent commission, otherwise known as seller's expenses. Okay, next page. Then a lot of these here, this is seller's representations. Number E, seller is current and not delinquent on all loans. We're going to put NA. We assume that they don't have any second mortgages. Seller is not aware of any liens. We'll put NA again. Now, if you do know that the seller is got a lien on it, put it in there. I, the name of any employer, relocation company, or other entity that provides benefits to seller is, well, it's not a relocation company. And then here is PID, Property Improvement District, or MUD, Municipal Utility District. We have to notify a potential buyer if those exist. And those are easy enough to find out. You ask the seller, are you in one? And we're going to say applicable. Now, if you're in one of the newer subdivisions, let's say I was just talking to an agent this evening about Savannah up in Denton County. There is a taxing district up there. Okay, 13, seller's additional promises. Welcome to read through that. 14, limitation of liability. And then we come here, special provisions. Again, we don't practice law, but what could a special provision be? In this case, we might write agent to notify seller only if offer is at asking price or above. Now, they can write that in there, but I'm going to tell my seller every offer I get, I'll just probably do it verbally and say, do you want me to email it to you? That's just an example, but we are not to practice law, and that's not what that blank is for. Okay. Other documents. Of course, I'm going to send over my IABS. Okay. Seller's disclosure notice. I'm going to make the seller fill that out. The house was built before 1978. Lead-based paint. Let's say it is because it's in Dallas. And I'm going to ask them to go get the T47, which is the survey that is notarized to say Mary, in this case, hasn't made any improvements to the property since the existing survey. We said there's no mud. We said there's no PID. And I think I did say there was a POA in this example. So I'd select G. Okay. And I'm looking at the others. And I think we're good. Okay, so we'll select those. Now, it's not a condo. There's not a tenant in there currently. So if you had a listing and there was a tenant in there currently, you need to get the key box authorization by the tenant. Seller's authorization to disclose and advertise certain information. I'm going to go ahead and check that. Because the seller may tell us things we cannot disclose, such as the full amount that they are offering to the buyer's commission. They want to hold a little bit of that back just in case from negotiation perspectives. Okay, down here, we're getting close to the end of the agreement. Paragraph H sometimes is missed. Seller is or is not a foreign person. That's from a tax perspective. You need to know that because if your seller is a foreign person and they don't pay taxes and these funds are sent overseas and the new buyer gets a tax bill, you might get a call from the buying agent. And then you sign as a broker associates and you have Mary sign here. And that is the end of the 11-page TXR 1101. And again, this is called the Residential Real Estate Listing Agreement Exclusive Right to Sell. I hope this helps. Have a great day.